Rookie season is technically over, but here in Fantasyland, we're kind of just beginning, waiting for the offseason to truly kick off at the end of July. So why not? Let's dive into rookies one more time. Let's go. Welcome into the double FU, the FU times 2. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel. This over here, if I get it right, is Matt Cooper at CouchScouts FF. Welcome into Matt. Just as a quick matter of introduction, you see it in his Twitter handle there. Right here on the screen is the founder of CouchScouts, which is relatively new. And if you haven't checked it out and for some reason checked me out instead, go make sure that you check him out over there. Also heavy in the film room over at DynastyNerds. So no one better to talk rookies and to talk film with than Matt Cooper here. So Matt, thanks for joining me. And how you doing, man?
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Appreciate you having me on. And man, we go back a ways, man. Before either of us were content creators, we were hanging out in the Dynasty Lounge. Shout out Joe O'Leary,
Yes,
and all the great guys in there. So, yeah, we've been in group chats, playing in leagues together for a long time, and then we both got into creating content, and it's been fun as our brand has been growing to watch you guys and what you're doing, and just seeing, man, how much content you guys are putting out every single day. It's just amazing how much good content you guys are putting out there. So definitely love what you guys are doing, and glad to be on the show. I feel like this is a layup. It should have happened a while ago. So appreciate you reaching out, and I finally was able to make time for it, and excited for this.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah, there's another guy who I invited on the show just a couple of days ago, Ryan Prosick, who I've worked at a couple of different companies with now. And we've been chatting ball for 4 or 5 years. And it was the first time we've ever been on a podcast together. So a lot of these like long overdue. So super happy that you can join us here. And yeah, definitely the Dynasty Lounge was kind of a great kind of like melting pot kind of training ground to, at least for me, to kind of like see if I kind of know what I'm talking about. And then, of course, get all those great insights from everybody in that community that just over time, just through osmosis, seeped into my pores, I think. And I like to think I'm better for it. So, yeah, absolutely. Shout out Joe and everything that he's got going on over there. But today I want to talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing at CouchScouts. So if you want to maybe just tell the people what's going on there, how long you've been doing that with them, and maybe your experience in with the film room at the DynastyNerds, and then we can jump into a little discussion about film and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started it was at the time, it was called the Devi to Dynasty Film Room, which is a mouthful and part of why we rebranded. But I launched my YouTube channel, man, it's probably been about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. And that was about the time I was introduced to the Dynasty Lounge, and I was in there and I was hanging out with all of you guys, and I decided to try my hand at content creation. And so for a while, it was just film breakdowns that I was doing on my YouTube channel, and just showing people what I was seeing and strengths and weaknesses, buys, sells, all that kind of stuff, and had a lot of fun. It grew. I mean, I was just doing it for a hobby. It grew a lot bigger than I expected it to. And then my friends, Matt Rupert and Matt Jackson, approached me about, hey, let's do a podcast. And so probably about a year ago, we launched the Devi to Dynasty Film Room podcast, and that was growing and going well. And then we decided we needed a rebrand. And so CouchScouts, I think as a brand, has been around for, I don't know, maybe since March. So not a super long time, but it's a continuation of something that has been going on for almost 3 years now. And it's been fun. We launched a brand new free Discord. So we wanted the people who listened and watched our shows and stuff to feel like they were getting to know us and part of a community, and shift from just being like content to consume to being a community that people could join. And so we launched a free Discord, and I can shoot you the link, Jeremy, to throw in your
Yep.
description on this show or whatever. If people want to come
Yes.
join, we'd love to have more people. It's just a great group of guys that's in there. I know you and Jesse are both in there,
Yep.
and people post their trades and get people's thoughts on their trades, and we react to news, and we talk rookies and talk about all kinds of stuff. People will post they're on the clock, just who they're deciding between, and get input from other people who they should draft. And it's a really fun group of guys. And so definitely encourage you guys, come join us in that free Discord. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search Couch Scouts, no space in between, one word, just Couch Scouts. And yeah, we do podcasts, we do film breakdowns, we've got the Discord, and we've got some other stuff that we're cooking up behind the scenes that we'll announce closer to the football season. But yeah, come check it out for sure.
Cool. Yeah. That was the note I was taking as you were talking there, is put Discord link in chat. So we'll make sure we get that out to the people, for sure. As I said earlier, the two people who might know us and not know you guys. So, let's talk a little bit about, in terms of the film that you've collated. I know that you worked, and I believe that's still your position, right, with the Dynasty Nerds. You're kind of like just you pulling together the film room, and
Yeah.
they have a massive collection over there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so Joe actually got me started as a writer for Dynasty Nerds, and then I ended up getting
Mhm.
connected as an editor for their film room, and then now I'm the film room coordinator. So they've
Nice.
got a massive library of all 22 cut ups where you can go watch a full game for one of these rookie prospects in like under 10 minutes. And every snap that they're on the field with none of the fluff, none of the commercials, nothing else. Just watch a full game in 10 minutes or less. And so it's a really great resource for scouting, and I use it for all of my own rookie study. So we did a rookie guide where we put out this 70 plus page PDF covering over 60 prospects, trait by trait, film analysis, film grades, rankings, the whole thing. And you can get that for $10. By the way, I know most people have already done their rookie draft, but if you are still doing rookie drafts and you want a great resource, you can pick up our rookie guide for $10. But all of that study that we did, we used the Dynasty Nerds film room to do it. And so that's been really fun, kind of leading that team for the Dynasty Nerds, and doing those cut ups and stuff. So
Yeah.
you can also, if you want to check out that Dynasty Nerds film room, you can use promo code COOP, COOP, and get yourself 15% off the film room. So I feel like I've done enough commercials for myself here, but definitely great resources. If you want to check those things out, join
Yeah.
the Discord, get the rookie guide, go get access to the film room. These are all things that I use and believe in, and have been great resources for me. So check those things out for sure. And I'll get you all the links. You can put all the links in there
Yes.
for
Perfect.
your people
We'll
in the
do.
description after the show.
Awesome. Awesome. Appreciate it. And yeah, speaking from personal experience, just great resources. It's what I use to prep for all of our rookie stuff as well. The film room, the Discord, fantastic, and the rookie guide. So yeah, we'll make sure we get it all in there. And the people would be silly to pass up on offers like that. Let's move on though, but let's talk about actually watching film. So from someone as experienced as yourself, who's watching these rookies, who's putting the film together, who's spending days upon days just kind of studying these guys, what do you think is kind of the most important thing, or maybe couple of things that you're looking for when you're studying film, that helps you to, I guess, project success at the next level? Now that may vary depending on position, but maybe there's some general things and then some positional things that you think you're looking for here.
Yeah, so it definitely varies by position. I think the important thing, obviously, when you are watching film, you're looking for traits. You're looking for traits that translate to fantasy points. So, for example, a wide receiver that can run really good routes is going to get open. They're going to earn targets. That's going to translate to fantasy points. And so I'm looking for which traits are the most translatable to fantasy points. And um, usually those are the ones that lead to volume, because the more volume that you've got, the more fantasy points that you're going to score. And so even as I'm diving into the film, there might be something like, oh, this wide receiver is a really good run blocker, or this running back is really good in pass protection. And those things are not unimportant, but they're not going to correlate as directly to fantasy points as some other traits. And so I think it's important to know, one, how to identify these traits. So when you're watching the film, how do you know what you're looking at and what you're seeing? Starting to notice things. So when you're watching games on a Sunday, noticing like the footwork and wow, that was a really explosive cut, and wow, he had great hands technique when he was catching that, and just things that like the average fan maybe is not looking for. When you start to look at it from the eyes of a scout and you're noticing these things as you're watching the film, and then knowing which traits, so first being able to identify the traits and see them when you're watching, and then second, knowing which ones are most important for fantasy. Those are kind of the two main things. And then position by position, obviously it's different traits that you're looking for. So I've got a grading system that we just developed this year with CouchScouts to put numerical grades, film grades on each prospect. And so right now we're only doing the film grading for running backs and wide receivers. We don't have a grading system yet for quarterbacks and tight ends. But like for wide receiver, I'm looking at release, route running, hands, contested catch, catch radius, body control, physicality, ball tracking, yards after the catch, game speed, burst, and quickness. Those are, I think it's 12 attributes that we're assigning a numerical grade to each one, and they're not all weighted the same. So like for us, we believe pretty strongly that route running is the thing that correlates the most strongly to fantasy success for a wide receiver, because again, if you run great routes, you're going to get open. If you get open, you're going to earn targets. We play PPR for the most part. And so, even if you're not catching a ton of stuff way deep down the field, just by racking up a bunch of receptions, that in and of itself is going to give you really steady fantasy points. So, if you can make those contested catches and get yards after the catch, that's like a cherry on top. But the most important thing, the heaviest weighted trait for us for wide receivers is the release and the route running. And similar on running backs. I mean, we're looking at things like vision, patience, elusiveness, tackle breaking, game speed, burst and acceleration, quickness, contact balance, pad level. So like, are they getting low and winning leverage, or are they running really upright and the defenders can get low and tackle them easier? That leads directly into physicality and power. Receiving, obviously playing in PPR leagues, receiving for a running back is more and more important these days. And pass pro, which again, I said it's not weighted as high. So like receiving gets a much higher weight on our film grade than the pass pro. Explosiveness gets more weight than pad level, that type of thing. So we have different traits that we feel like leads to fantasy success, and then we grade based on what we're seeing on film, and all that kind of spits out a total score, which will tell you if you think they're going to be a backup in the league, or if you think they're going to be a fantasy starter or potentially have elite upside. And so that's just a little window, I guess, into our process as we're studying these guys and what we're looking for.
Nice. So let's start with wide receiver first here. What do you think you mentioned all of those traits, and you mentioned separation. I think I've recently come to the conclusion that I'm kind of done with the Keon Coleman type wide receivers who are not those elite separators, right? Even though I've been burned at times with maybe a Jerry Jeudy or a Jamison Williams, really, before I was able to dive deep. Guys who kind of looked like they could separate, maybe weren't elite separators, but they at least had that. But do you really see that? On your fantasy teams, you want elite separators at the position, or are there like other traits that can maybe sway you personally if you kind of see them on film?
Yeah, so I would say in order of priority, I would say a receiver's first job is to get open. His second job is to catch the ball when it gets thrown to him.
Yeah,
And
true.
then his
Well,
third
that's a good
job,
point.
if once he catches the ball, is to do something with it, get some yards after the
Yeah.
catch, make a play. And so I think really in order of priority, that's it. It's route running, and then it's ball skills, and then it's yards after the catch for me. And and I would say athleticism is probably the most overrated wide receiver trait,
Yeah.
because if it's functional athleticism that leads into those other three things, then that's great. Like, a guy maybe is not the tallest or most top speed guy, but he's really, really quick and bursty in and out of his breaks, and that leads him to create separation. Like, that's functional
Sure.
athleticism. But people always fall in love with like the RAS, that like, which, if you don't know, it's relative athletic score. So they size adjust everything. And it's a really valuable resource. I love RAS. I'm not trying to pick on it, but like, these guys that have like the 9.9 RAS because they're 6'4" and they ran a 4.3, it's like, okay, so he's tall and he can run fast in a straight line. There's some value in that can contribute to things like contested catch. But a lot of those guys tend to be really rough after the catch because they have no lateral agility, which also plays into their
Mhm.
route running because they've got stiff hips. And so a lot of these guys, whether it be a Treylon Burks or a Quentin Johnston or, like you said, I think Keon Coleman fits into that category this year, that the film shows that they're a little bit stiff hip. They're not as quick in and out of their breaks. There's just different concerns. It's like that guy tends to get overrated, I think. And so athleticism plays into our model for sure for wide receivers, but it's not weighted as highly as like release, route running, hands, and body control are our four most important, highest weighted traits. And so body control is like, can they contort in midair to like maybe catch a pass that's outside their frame, or they're running across the field and the ball's thrown behind them and they have to reach back for it. So those tend to, contested catch and body control can really help you in red zone and rack you up touchdowns. And then the release route running obviously is going to give you that high reception total and the PPR value and that type of thing. So if you're really good in those areas, you're probably going to score a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah. Love it. I want to dive into these rookies, but it just occurred to me I cannot do that just in case we miss out on these guys, and we probably won't. But we need to talk quickly about these two Carolina Panthers, who I know is your team. These two Carolina Panther rookies, and I want, we'll start with Leggett, who kind of profiles as this insane RAS score guy who you just talked about, but there's concerns elsewhere, I think. How are you feeling
Mhm.
about Leggett? Do you think he has a chance here to develop, unlike Terrace Marshall and Mingo before him? What's happening in Carolina with Leggett? And then you can jump into Brooks. So maybe the bad, then the good.
Yeah, so you're probably not surprised hearing everything that I just said to say that I didn't love the Leggett pick. I
Yeah,
think, for whatever reason, I'm cursed that I follow and I'm a fan of the Carolina Panthers, and they seem to love this archetype that I just said is
yeah,
consistently overrated and consistently busts. And so I do think Leggett is a better prospect than Mingo was last year.
sure.
And in terms of, the film score stuff, like I said, my third and fourth most highly weighted things is your hands and your body control, which he's off the charts in both of those things. And so
Nice.
it's not like I hate everything about him as a prospect, but he got really low scores for me in the areas of release and route running, which
Sure.
is a concern because that's my most important trait, and he's wasn't great at it. So I think with that and his age and his production profile and not really breaking out till a fifth year senior, I thought first round was a reach. Um, I had Lad McConkey with a significantly higher film grade, and he was still on the board, and we could have had him. Same thing with Xavier. No, Worthy was gone, so he was
Really
off the
was
board. But
funny.
McConkey and Adonai Mitchell, I had both of those guys with a significantly higher film grade than Leggett, and so we took Leggett. I was disappointed with the pick, as always. I hope I'm wrong. Whenever I disagree with the Panthers, I hope
Yep.
they're right and I'm
Yep.
wrong. I said it about Mingo last year. Unfortunately, it looks like I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm not overly excited about it. I think depending on where you can get Leggett in a rookie draft, there's a lot of people that feel the way I do. So sometimes he falls and you can even get him like early third. And I think
Yeah.
for a
I
guy
see
that
that.
went in the first round of the NFL draft, like there could be some value on that. But in a lot of cases he's going early second, and I'm not touching him there. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at on
I
Leggett.
hear you on Leggett. I guess the consolation prize there is Diontae Johnson, someone who has proven to separate,
Oh yeah,
and
I
the
love that trade
30,
for us.
yeah, fantastic, and the 34-year-old Adam Thielen, who is still
Right.
out there, gonna try to
I
give it
mean,
another go.
he had a okay year last year,
He
just
did,
peppered with
he
targets.
did.
I think Deontay is going to get those targets now, so Thielen's probably
Yeah,
kind of dead for
agree.
fantasy at this point. But
Oh yeah,
um, and then Jonathan Brooks, and I forgot to mention him. I loved that pick for us in the mid-second round. He's
yeah,
been my RB1 for a
yep.
while now, and he's the most complete back in this class. I love Bucky Irving, who we might talk about later.
Mm,
But
okay,
Bucky, he's not a 3-down back.
yeah,
I mean, he's got the skill to be, but he doesn't have the size to be. And obviously he went day 3. So you got Jonathan Brooks, who is a great pass catcher. He's really explosive, or at least he was before the ACL. So hopefully he gets that back. Changes direction on a dime. I would say he's got high elusiveness for a bigger back. Just he's the complete package. In all of my film grading, I don't know that he got lower than like a 7 or a 7.5 in anything.
yeah,
So very well-rounded, complete back. You get the second round draft capital, which is really, really good. He's got a clear path to a workhorse opportunity because his biggest competition is Chuba Hubbard, who's
mhm,
a jag. So yeah, I love Jonathan Brooks for fantasy. He's a guy that I could see taking as high as 109. And for me, I've kind of got a tier after that top 8 in super flex leagues. I've got a 3-person tier of Worthy, McConkey, and
yep,
Brooks. And depending on team need, I'd
cool,
be comfortable taking any of those guys at the 109. Um, and I do have a tier break there. So a lot of people are like, oh, Brian Thomas Jr., same tier. Um,
yeah,
you could throw a couple others in there. Keon Coleman, a lot of people think is in that tier. Not for me.
yeah.
So I've got those 3 as my 9, 10, and 11 in super flex leagues right after that top 8 that everybody loves.
Yeah, I'm lockstep right there with you. I think I've been Worthy 9, Brooks 10, and McConkey 11 personally. Like you said, it depends on team need, but I'm not a huge Brian Thomas Jr. fan either. Even though he's a size speed freak. We'll just see. Personally, I think Jaden Daniels. We're discounting, I think, how good Jaden Daniels may have been himself, and kind of giving a lot of that to Brian Thomas. Where I mean, when are we going to stop discounting these Heisman winners just because Reggie Bush faltered and Matt Leinart wasn't it? We want to say Devonta Smith, he's not good enough and too small, and Jaden Daniels, he's just this. But yeah, we'll see on those guys. And I have a few questions, but about film as well. One in particular, but I think we'll save that to the end. And let's just jump into the rookies here. So after my rambling, let's discuss here the first round. I'm actually in a rookie draft right now. My home league just started its rookie draft about 2 hours ago. Home leagues, gotta love them.
Yeah.
So Caleb Williams, the 101 here. So we're excited to kick it off. But what are you thinking about in the first round? Who are some of your favorite guys? We talked about that back end tier at the back of the first. We know you like those guys, but maybe first question is, who then are you comfortable taking at the 112, assuming those guys are gone? And then who are some of maybe a couple other guys that you like in the first?
Yeah. So I'll just say that I this isn't like a spicy take. I love the top 3 wide receivers. They are so like
Yeah,
to be drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft and to have the prospect profiles they have and the film grades on all those guys is like elite for me.
studs. Yeah,
So I have zero questions about, like if you're gonna see Rome drop because he's got Keenan Allen and DJ Moore on his team, for example, like, and if people are wanting to throw that in and compare him with JSN and say, okay, we're going to see the same thing where he disappoints and his value drops. They're not the same player. They're not the same level of
yeah,
prospect. The situations are not the same. So I love Rome. If he's fallen to 7 or 8 in your league, I think that's a steal. Um, I mean, you're splitting hairs in that top tier. For
Mhm.
me, like Caleb Williams is the clear 101. I could hear arguments on either Marvin Harrison or Jaden Daniels at 2.
Yeah.
Um, but and then you got Neighbors is going pretty consistently 4 or 5, but Odunze
Yeah.
is and Bowers are more falling to like the 7, 8 range. And so I
Yeah.
loved, if I can get Bowers or Rome at the end of that tier, I feel really great
Yeah.
about it. I'm pretty risk averse when I'm spending high picks like that. And so like Drake May and JJ McCarthy scare me a little bit more. It's like I
Yeah.
know the
Sure.
process is right, that they're like highly drafted first round quarterbacks, and you know the physical tools are there, and obviously McCarthy's got the great supporting cast, and I think they can be really good players, and because they are quarterbacks, if they do hit, they're going to be more valuable than the receivers, and like I get all that, but I just have a little less confidence. Like the receivers and Bowers feel like such sure things to me, so I personally have May and McCarthy at like 7, 8 at the end of that tier. I just feel a little less confident in them than the other guys, but it's a stacked class this year in that top 8. Like the fact that you could get a May or a McCarthy at 7 or 8, or you could get a Rome or Bowers at 7 or 8, like that 7, 8 this year is just nuts. Like you didn't even make the
Yeah.
playoff, or you made the playoffs and you were a
Yeah.
contender, and you're adding just ridiculous talent at that point in the draft. So, um, anyway, that's a little bit of you asked about the 112. So, and then I went on
Yeah.
a long sidebar.
No, it's cool.
My 112 is a little more controversial. So
Okay.
I don't have my rankings right up in front of me, but I think my 12th ranked player in Superflex is Adonai Mitchell.
Nice.
And he's consistently at like 2.6, 2.7, 2.8.
Yeah.
And I know Jesse's not a big Adonai Mitchell guy. So I'm sure that's probably been touched on the show, touched on this show
Mhm.
before. I love Adonai Mitchell, and it scares
Same.
me how much I love him because the work ethic concerns are absolutely there, and
Yeah.
the the production in college is absolutely not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't get drafted as highly as I thought that he was going to get drafted. Um, but when he was fully engaged, like the guy that I saw on film, I was like, man, this guy could be a superstar. Like
Yeah.
not just the size and the speed, but the actual like functional athleticism laterally to like break guys' ankles running routes, win on the release point against press coverage, win at the stem of his routes, creating separation all over the field. And then on top of it, you got the elite ball skills to go up and make the contested catch, the sticky hands, the whole thing. The only thing he doesn't really do is yards after the catch. But in all of my 4 most important traits on my grading system, he's like in the elite tier on all of those things. And so, and he lands in a situation where there's a clear opportunity to be the number 2 wide receiver on the team, and a lot of young talent on that roster. I think people are overreacting a little because he was being mocked as a first round pick before the real
Yeah.
NFL draft. And then he falls and he goes to the Colts, and all of a sudden he's 2.7, 2.8. And I just think that's too low for a guy that's as talented as he is, that went in the second round of the draft, that has a pretty clear path to opportunity. So that's my 112, and it's a little bit spicy, but and I haven't taken him at 112 anywhere because I don't have to. I can trade
Yeah.
back, and I
You
can
don't have
take him
to.
in the middle of the second round, and I just feel like that's a slam dunk for me.
Yeah, I love AD Mitchell, the player. I'm a little concerned about the situation. I'm not concerned about Anthony Richardson as a passer necessarily. I'm not concerned about a Shane Steichen offense. I think my concern just stems more around how they're going to use him. We've already heard some reports out of minicamp that they see AD Mitchell as like this guy who can just do everything and be all over the field. And hopefully that kind of talk continues because I would love to see him moved around the formation when he's ready. I don't think it's particularly close between him and Josh Downs in terms of a talent. So if you move Mitchell into the slot, I think functionally you can move Pittman around and just do some really fun things with this offense where you have a 1A and 1B on either side who can all move around. And then, of course, you have the ridiculous run game with Richardson and Taylor there. So it could be really fun. I hope they figure it out, and I hope they figure it out this year. But I think Mitchell can do a lot of fun things and really open up that offense in addition to being the deep threat with his speed.
Yeah, and I think, if they're creative enough, like Downs is also a guy that I liked last year and had a good rookie season. And I just because he's a little undersized, I wouldn't play him there full time. But I think for stretches of games, if you wanted to put Adonai in the slot, Downs
Yep.
can play the Z. I mean, he's speedy,
Yeah.
he can stretch the field, he's got ball skills on the outside. So, I do think these are pieces that you can move around. And my only concern there is it a low volume passing offense with three guys
Sure.
who all deserve targets, and so none of them eat fully the way that you want them to. But situations are temporary. The talent is going to win out, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I think a guy that goes round 2 with a clear path to a starting role with a guy that I had with an elite film grade to get him in the mid second. I'll take that gamble all day, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I love it. I think he's a value as well. How about some other values outside of the first round? Some rookies that you like who are going maybe a little bit later than you think they should be going. Maybe we'll talk both in terms of dynasty and guys who you think can kind of jump out and pop out in year one and who can kind of gain value. Who do you like in rounds 2, rounds 3 of these rookie drafts, or even late in dynasty startups?
Yeah, so first, I'll say like early second round, I'm
Mhm.
looking at AD Mitchell, who we already talked about. I'm looking at Trey Benson, who
Yep.
he was my 4th ranked running back coming into the draft, but I think he landed in the second best situation outside of Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah.
And we have seen over and over and over again. I mean, look at Tajay Spears last year. When a running back goes in to a situation where he is kind of the change of pace behind a more established older guy.
Mhm.
In Tajay's case, it was Derrick Henry. In this case, it's James Conner. Javonte Williams would be another example of this. All that rookie has to do is show some flashes. When they come in
Yeah.
and they get their like 20 snaps a game or whatever, just make a couple highlight plays here and there throughout the season. And fantasy Twitter will lose their minds over it. And everybody will assume that, oh, next year, that old guy, he's going to move on. And that young guy, he's going to be the workhorse next year. And they're going to climb in those dynasty ranks.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, this time next offseason, you're going to be seeing Trey Benson, who maybe just finished as like the PPR RB40. It's not like he did anything
Yep.
crazy,
Yep.
but he's just showed a few flashes, and you're going to see him ranked as like a top 10 dynasty running back.
Yeah.
And obviously, when that happens, I would say sell because most of the
Yeah.
time
Oh, yeah.
that guy doesn't pay off the hype. But in terms of a guy that you can get right now in the early second that I think is going to climb in value significantly by this time
Mhm.
next year, I think Trey Benson fits that category.
Yeah.
I would be taking him above guys like Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas Jr., and he's going below them. So I think he's a value in the early second round. Another running back I really like is Marshawn Lloyd. This is more of a dynasty
Yep.
play probably because he's got to share the backfield with Josh Jacobs, but Jacobs has a lot of wear and tear on him. He showed some signs last year being washed. Marshawn Lloyd looks to me on film like a really, really good running back. He was my RB2, I believe, in film grade, and then dropped to my RB3 because I felt like Benson got a better situation than him.
Yep.
But Marshawn Lloyd is another guy that I think, I mean, you can get him in the 3rd round of rookie drafts a lot of times right now. And I
Yeah.
think that's an absolute steal. By the way, the back half of the second round, I think is total landmine territory. Like Jalen
Mm.
Polk, no shot. I'm not touching him in the second
Mhm.
round.
Yeah.
Roman Wilson, like a lot of the
Mhm.
late second round, Leggett, even, I'm like, I want to avoid those guys. And then a lot of the early 3rd round, I'm like, hey, I love, Jermaine Burton, Javon
Burton.
Baker is a
Yeah.
favorite of mine. I think Baker's a much better player than Polk. I don't know why they got drafted
Okay.
2 rounds apart like they did in the real NFL draft. I'm not going to
Sure.
be arrogant and assume that like I'm smarter than the Patriots GMs or
Might
whatever,
be.
but you know, I don't. I just think I trust my eye. My process has done pretty good for me.
Mhm.
I'm not going to bet on a guy that when I watched the film I didn't think he was a good player, and that would be Jalen Polk.
Sure.
And at cost, when I can get Baker a full round later in like the middle of the third
Mhm.
round, and I think he's I had him like 15, 20 points higher in my film grade. Like it was a substantial difference between Polk and Baker. It's
Yeah.
not like they were close. If they were close, I'd let
Yeah.
the draft capital be the tiebreaker, but I thought Baker was way better. And so, there's a clear path there for him to potentially, if he comes in and performs well, that wide receiver room's wide open. I think the Patriots want anybody that can give May a weapon. And so
Yeah.
if Baker comes in and establishes and he has a great training camp and a great preseason, there's no reason why he can't win the number one job. It's wide open.
Yeah.
And so to get that in the middle of the third round on a guy that I had a great film score on, that feels like a really good value to me. Bucky Irving is another guy I had a really good film score on. He falls to day 3. And I do think Rachaad White is still going to get his. So I'm not like projecting Bucky to come in and set the world on fire as a rookie, but I think he's a fine dart to throw in the third round or later. So I like a lot of the guys you can get in the early to mid third better than the guys you can get in the late second. And so that's something that when I've been finding myself in the late second, I'm either taking Ben Sinnott, Marshawn Lloyd, or Adonai Mitchell if they're there. And if they're
Yep.
not, and I'm looking at this like Polk, Roman Wilson kind of tier, that's when I'm looking to trade back. Can I pick up 2/3 for this
Yeah.
late second and go get Javon Baker and Bucky Irving? Or, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I've been approaching my rookie drafts. I really like a lot of these guys, that are more of the late second, early third type of range, above some of the guys that are going above them in ADP.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I just want to address something you said earlier about Trey Benson. Even Marshawn Lloyd, I think, falls into this category where these guys are going to retain their value. Like you said, they just need to show flashes. Some names: Chase Brown, off the top of my head, Chase Brown, Jaleel McLaughlin, Jalen Warren, even though he wasn't a rookie last year. These guys are retaining their value. They have this. It's I call it Tony Pollard syndrome, where like you
Mm,
automatically assume that the guy who was a high efficiency, low touch guy is automatically just going to carry that efficiency into a high volume role if given the opportunity. And that's
mhm,
not always the case. We've seen that over and over again. So, I think the Devon Achans and Tajay Spears of the world should remain those high efficiency, low touch guys because they stay healthy. I mean, theoretically, Achan didn't, I guess, but they stay healthy. They're able to kind of have that burst on, available whenever they touch the ball, and they're best utilized in that kind of change of pace, situational, NFL scheme usage. Then if you're giving them letting them touch the ball 20, 25 times a game. So Jalen Warren for me is a great example of a guy who, people think, oh, Warren's going to take over the backfield next year. Najee's out the door. They didn't pick up his option. And I just don't see that as the case. I think Warren is a good back for sure. But this screams Tony Pollard to me all over again. We did see Tony Pollard have a great season when he was given the role. But then again, it didn't necessarily work out for him other than that one season. So that's kind of one thing for me. And then the second thing is obviously all of these third round receivers are really interesting. Like you're mentioning, Burton and Baker are two of the better values that I've seen. I've seen people take those guys in the late second round over some of the guys that you're
mhm.
talking about, like a Polk or a Leggett. So for
And I
me,
would.
yeah,
I mean,
I
if push
totally agree
come to
with everything
shove,
you're saying.
if I'm there and I can't trade back, I'm taking my guy. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take like Burton. To me, I mean, I had a really good film grade on him. He goes day 2. And yeah, he goes to the Bengals, but like he goes to a Bengals team that clearly T. Higgins wants out. It seems like it's a matter of,
Yeah.
when, not if T. Higgins is going to be moved. And so, worst case scenario, you're looking at like a souped up Tyler Boyd, and they run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Best
Yeah.
case scenario, they move on from T. Higgins. Burton could be the number 2 guy in a really high powered offense. And so yeah, push comes to shove. I'm sitting in the late second. Sennett, Lloyd, some of those guys are gone. I can't trade back and get my thirds the way that I want to. I don't care if it looks like a reach to take Burton over Roman Wilson. I think Burton's a better player. I'm going to do it. So
Yeah.
that's just that's how I've been approaching the whole thing.
I love it. How about some sleepers? Anybody who is available in round 4, who you find yourself routinely taking, or anybody who sometimes falls to waivers? Like for me, it's Rasheen Ali. I just think he walks into an interesting situation. I know Tyrone Tracy is a darling in the Giants, so I don't know if you like any of those guys or anybody else who you find yourself in the late rounds or even on waivers just taking a shot at.
Yeah, I mean, by that point, you're looking at people that it's a really low percentage chance that they're going to be
Yeah,
anything, either because of draft capital or just because they weren't guys that you had a good film grade on to begin with.
sure.
So I'm looking at guys, can I see a path to opportunity? And so
Mhm.
obviously, like Vidal and Tyrone Tracy, that's why they've been beaten to death by the fantasy community and why they're not even usually
Yeah,
there in the 4th round anymore.
right.
If they are, I think they're good darts to throw because they have a clear path to volume, and volume is king in fantasy. Another guy I do see in the 4th round a decent bit is Jalen McMillan. I think he's a really good route runner and separator. You got the day 2
Mhm.
draft capital, and yeah, it's a really crowded wide receiver room right now, but it seems like a team that is kind of trying to squeeze another year or 2 out of a really older core, and then there's going to be a
Mhm.
transition period. And
Yeah,
I could see Jalen McMillan kind of be in the future in that Chris Godwin role, and I think he's a good player. So to get that in round 4, that's at least a path. I can see the path, right? It's
yeah,
either a player that I think is talented that fell that far because of situation, or it's a situation that's really good, but the draft capital wasn't there, which would be
right.
more the case of like a Kamani Vidal. So those are kind of the archetypes that I'm targeting. Like Luke McCaffrey is another one that's there in the 4th round, a
Mhm.
decent amount. It's like, okay, he got day 2 draft capital, didn't hate the tape. I could see the path there. Maybe not year 1, but in a couple of years. Those are, it's dart throw territory anyway, but that's kind of, I'm looking either for a path. Spencer Rattler is another one that's like, okay,
Mhm.
that team could very well by halfway through the season be like, all right, we're done with the Derek Carr area. Let's just see what we got.
Yeah,
And, next thing you know, Spencer Rattler is in this like Sam Howell type of situation where you kind of know he's probably not the long-term answer, but it also kind of looks like he's going to get a full year as a starter in super flex league.
Mhm.
And so if that happens, like that's a steal in round 4 because this time next year
Yeah,
you could get
true.
a second round pick for him, that type of thing. So just looking for a chance, just a path to opportunity in round 4.
Awesome. And before we get you out of here, do you have any predictions? I'm not going to ask you for a hot take necessarily, but any sort of thoughts about whether it's the NFL in general or the fantasy. Any predictions that you have that you think are not necessarily consensus, where you think I think this guy or this team is going to have a big year, and so maybe I'm a little bit higher on these players than most.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad question, but
Yeah.
I will hit on a couple things that we've hit on our show a couple times.
Mhm.
One, Deontay Johnson, huge Deontay Johnson fan. That
Nice.
guy is a separator, professional separator on a team that desperately needs it. If
Yep.
Adam Thielen can go out there and have a high end wide receiver 2 fantasy finish last year,
Mhm.
whatever's left of him, Deontay Johnson is a lot better than whatever was left of Thielen last year. And so I
Yep.
think he comes in with a fresh start. He's a talented player. People forget he was the PPR wide receiver 8 when he had Ben Roethlisberger at his quarterback. And then he just went through a couple of years where it was like Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and whatever. And so, I think Diontae
Ridiculous.
Johnson could be an absolute steal at his ADP right now. And then I'll go with another vet. You mentioned Chase Brown earlier. How about Austin Ekeler going below Chase Brown in startup ADP?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like the guy that finished RB1 overall and then RB2 overall and then dealt with a high ankle sprain this year. That guy's going below Chase Brown as the RB41 in startup ADP. Like that to me is insane. He's better than Brian Robinson, and he doesn't. He's a PPR guy. He's going to catch passes, so he doesn't need he doesn't need to be a bell cow. In fact, he's almost better when he's not. He's one of those, like you said, like the high efficiency, low touch, role might be what's best for him. But yeah, Ekeler. Even if he just finishes as like RB16 or something, he's like a mid-range RB2. To get that at RB41 in a startup draft, I think he's a steal at ADP. So I'll say Diontae Johnson and Austin Ekeler are my bold predictions for 2024. I don't think Ekeler is washed. I think he was dealing with a high ankle sprain. That's my bold prediction. I think that's the reason that he's got the RB41 ADP is because everybody assumes that he's washed because they've seen a couple clips where he looks slow at the end of the year. I'm going to say he's not washed. He surprises a lot of people this year, and he returns great value at his current cost.
I love that one. I love the Diontae one. We've been talking about Diontae all off season. I just want to give you this little tidbit to chew on. Diontae on Sleeper is the wide receiver 49 for this season. His projections are 66 receptions, 690 yards, and 4 touchdowns, which might be true. But the 66 receptions, I think it's more like 100.
Has he ever been that bad?
I can't. Maybe last season with a ridiculous QB play. Last season was tough.
With Matt Canada,
before last season, he had 144, 169, 147 targets. This guy's going to be
he's consistently been top 10 in targets every year that he's been in the league, which tells me he's a great route runner and he's earning those targets because I'm a firm believer that targets are earned. It's not just there's a vacuum. Who else you going to have to throw to? He's a target earner, and he's going to be getting a lot of them this year. A lot.
We love Diontae too. All right, so let's get you out of here, Matt. If you want to just let everybody know again where they can find you, and we'll post all the links, but tell them about everything you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me at CouchScoutsFF on Twitter/X. And definitely join the Discord. Would love to interact with you guys in there. So that'll be in the description on the show. And you can find our youtube.com/@CouchScouts. Look for us on Apple, Spotify, wherever. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeremy. It's been a blast. And for you guys listening, hopefully gave you some good advice, return some value, made it worth your time. So
we got one guy who Derek liked it. And listen, there's going to be plenty more, so we appreciate you, like you said at the top, Matt, just long overdue, so thanks a lot for coming on. You can find Matt where he mentioned at CouchScouts. Check him out. You can find us at thefantasyfootballuniverse.com. We are on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. We're on TikTok for some reason. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're all over the place putting out daily content. We have a tons of rookie information for you, et cetera, mock drafts, giveaways, things. So check us out. Check Matt out. And thanks again for joining us, Matt. I am Jeremy, and we will see you guys next time.